She hadn't moved in weeks until a boy's gentle touch sparked something no one expected. The Columbus Zoo was alive with the usual weekend bustle. Children laughing, parents pushing strollers packed with snacks, the warm sun casting playful shadows across the pathways. But in the gorilla enclosure, Kalala, a 15-year-old silverback, sat motionless in the farthest corner, her massive frame curled in on herself, staring at the ground as if waiting for something that would never come. For weeks, she hadn't eaten, hadn't responded. Not to the keepers, not to the other gorillas, not to the endless stream of visitors tapping on the glass and calling her name. The keepers watched from a distance, whispering updates into their radios, their voices heavy with concern. She hasn't been the same since she lost the baby. One murmured, his eyes fixed on Kayla's still form. I think she's giving up. It had been 3 months since the tragedy. 3 months since Kayla's infant stopped breathing in the dead of night, her anguished cries echoing through the enclosure as she clutched the lifeless body, refusing to let go. The staff had eventually intervened, but something in Kala broke that night. She stopped howling, stopped eating, her once bright eyes now dull with grief. Most visitors passed her by, disappointed by her stillness, their attention drawn to the playful younger gorillas swinging from ropes or the babies clinging to their mothers. But one child stopped, Liam Carter, a quiet 8-year-old with a mop of curly brown hair, drifted away from his school group, his sneakers scuffing the ground as he approached the glass. He didn't yell or wave like the others, didn't bang on the barrier to get attention. Instead, he stood still, his small frame barely noticeable in the crowd, and pressed his hand gently against the glass. For the first time in weeks, Kala lifted her head. It was subtle at first, a twitch of her fingers, a slight tilt of her massive skull, but then her gaze found Liam, and it was electric. Her dull eyes locked onto his, unblinking, her nostrils flaring slightly, as if catching a scent she hadn't smelled in years. Without a sound, Kala rose, her heavy body moving with a slow, deliberate grace. One step, then another, she crossed the enclosure, the crowd around Liam gasping. As she approached the glass, she hadn't moved toward the barrier in over a month. But now she stood directly in front of the boy, towering at nearly 400 pounds, her breath fogging the surface. Then, in a moment that felt almost sacred, she lifted her massive hand and pressed it against the glass, palm to palm with Liam. Liam didn't flinch, his hazel eyes locked on hers, a quiet understanding passing between them that no one else in the crowd could grasp. Onlookers froze, some smiled, others frowned, confused by the sudden connection. Phones came out, flashes lighting up the scene, but Kala didn't care. She only saw the boy. Headkeeper Rachel Evans arrived at a brisk walk, her radio crackling in her hand, her expression a mix of shock and curiosity. She's touching the glass, a junior keeper murmured. Disbelief in his voice. Hasn't happened since the baby died. Rachel stepped closer, her brow furrowing as she studied Kala's posture. It wasn't just attention. It was recognition, focused and emotional, almost human. Then Kala began to move again, her free hand rising slowly, her fingers curling and uncurling in a pattern that made Rachel's breath catch. It wasn't random. It was sign language, rough and basic, signs Kala had learned years ago during early bonding sessions with staff and visitors. The movements were stiff, unpracticed, but deliberate. She was trying to say something. Liam tilted his head, curious but unafraid, his hand still pressed against the glass. His mother, Jessica Carter, stepped closer, her voice gentle but firm. Liam, come on, sweetheart. But the boy didn't move, his gaze locked on Kayla's. Rachel turned to Jessica, her voice urgent. What did you say his name was? Jessica Carter. And this is Liam, she replied, confusion knitting her brow. Rachel froze, a chill running down her spine. It can't be, she whispered, then turned quickly. I'll be right back. She rushed toward the staff office, her mind racing with the memory she couldn't quite place. A connection that felt just out of reach. Inside the cluttered staff office, Rachel tore through old paperwork, her hands shaking as she rifled through archived files and program logs. Years ago, Kala had been part of a short-lived animal-assisted bonding program at the zoo, one that allowed parents and young children to observe and interact with pregnant gorillas from safe, reinforced areas. The program aimed to test emotional connectivity between species, and Kala had been a star participant, responsive, gentle, almost maternal, with the children. Rachel's fingers froze on a logbook entry. Mother, Jessica Carter, son, Liam Carter. Weekly visits for 4 months. Discontinued after infant loss. Her heart pounded as she pulled out a file of photos, flipping through until she found one dated nearly 5 years ago. A tiny toddler in a blue jacket, pressing his hand against the glass. Kala's pregnant form, towering on the other side. It was Liam, younger and smaller, but undeniably him. Rachel clutched the photo, her mind reeling. She remembers him, she whispered, the realization hitting her like a wave. Back at the enclosure, Kala hadn't moved an inch, her massive hand still pressed against the glass, her eyes locked on Liam. The crowd had swelled, murmurs rippling through the onlookers as they recorded the moment. But Liam sat cross-legged on the floor now, as if this were the most natural place in the world. Kala shifted suddenly, lowering herself further until her belly nearly touched the ground, and began tapping the glass in a slow, rhythmic pattern. 3 taps, a pause, then 2. It was a beat, a game, a memory. Liam blinked, his small fingers beginning to mirror the pattern instinctively. Tap, 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 pause, tap, tap. Kala's lips parted slightly, a soft, guttural rumble escaping her throat, a sound the keepers hadn't heard in months. Rachel returned, the photo trembling in her hand as she knelt beside Jessica. "Do you remember coming here years ago?" she asked softly. Jessica hesitated, her brow furrowing. "Yes, when Liam was very little. I was in a tough spot back then. Someone suggested the zoo program. Something about bonding, emotional support. I didn't think it had any real impact, but he loved it." Rachel showed her the photo, and Jessica gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "That's us." Liam leaned in, his brows furrowing as he studied the toddler in the picture. "That's me," he whispered. Rachel nodded, her voice soft. "Kala was pregnant then. She responded to you more than anyone else in the program. You used to sit here, just like this, every week." Liam tilted his head, his voice honest. "I don't remember, but Kala does," Rachel said, her eyes flicking to the gorilla. Kala swayed gently, her massive arms curving inward, as if rocking a baby, her movements slow and deliberate. Liam watched her silently, a flicker of understanding crossing his young face. "She's pretending I'm her baby," he whispered, his voice barely audible. No one corrected him, because he might be right. The zoo staff exchanged glances, the moment shifting from spectacle to something sacred. Jessica knelt beside her son, her hand hovering near his shoulder, unsure what to say. But Liam spoke first, his voice soft but certain. "It's okay. Kala, I'm here now." And somehow, that was enough. Kala grunted low, laying her arm along the ground and resting her head on it, still facing the boy. For the first time in 3 months, she closed her eyes, not in sorrow, but in peace. Morning turned to midday, but Kala didn't move from the glass, and neither did Liam. The crowd thinned, the novelty replaced by a weightier reverence, and the zookeepers cordoned off the area, their usual chatter replaced by silence and the soft, constant thump of Liam's fingers tapping against the glass. The zoo staff stood at a distance, their radios crackling with updates as they watched Kayla and Liam, the gorilla and the boy who had rekindled something lost. Rachel, the headkeeper, spoke calmly into her radio, her voice steady but tinged with awe. No signs of agitation, vital signs looked normal. Appetite's back. Her assistant's voice crackled through, hesitant. "Then why does it feel so unstable?" Rachel didn't respond immediately, her gaze fixed on Kayla, who had begun gathering objects, leaves, a piece of cloth, the broken remains of an old enrichment toy, stacking them carefully near the glass. "She's nesting," Rachel muttered, her voice barely audible. "She's making a bed for him." Jessica, watching from a nearby bench, pressed her hands over her mouth, her eyes glistening as she took in the scene. Liam spoke up, his voice soft but firm. "Can I give her something?" Rachel paused, then nodded, her heart in her throat. Liam reached into his backpack and pulled out a small stuffed animal, A frayed teddy bear, clearly loved, with one button eye missing. He pressed it gently against the glass, and Kala froze, her dark eyes locking onto the toy. Slowly, cautiously, she lifted her hand and mirrored the gesture. Palm against teddy bear, palm against glass. A soft exhale left her throat, and then she took her old cloth and folded it over the toy's reflection. Like a blanket, Rachel turned to Jessica, her voice quiet but urgent. She's parenting. She's gone full maternal. I think she believes he's come back to her. Jessica's voice trembled. And if he leaves again? Rachel didn't answer, the question hanging heavy in the air. Back at the administration office, the staff debated the situation. Some worried it might be unhealthy, a surrogate bond spiraling into fixation, while others saw Kala's behavior as a sign of healing. Rachel pushed back, her voice firm. She's healing. Slowly, gently, this boy is the key. A plan was set in motion. Monitored weekly visits under strict supervision, not just for Kala's sake, but for Liam's, too. Jessica had noticed a change in her son since that first day. He was sleeping better, eating more, talking more, a spark returning to his eyes that she hadn't seen in years. The next week, Liam returned, and Kayla was already waiting at the glass. This time, he brought a drawing, Kayla cradling a baby gorilla, with a boy standing beside her. When he held it up, Kala grunted softly, then leaned forward and pressed her forehead to the glass with aching tenderness. Liam mirrored her, their foreheads separated only by the barrier, and for a moment, there were no keepers, no enclosures, no years lost, just recognition and love. The video of their reunion went viral within hours. Millions watching the footage of Kala pressing her forehead to the glass, cradling the stuffed toy, rocking gently beside a child she hadn't seen in half a decade, but never forgot. News vans crowded the zoo entrance, reporters clamoring for interviews, some calling it proof of animal memory, others dismissing it as emotional projection. But those who were there knew they'd witnessed something real. Inside her enclosure, Kala waited by the glass every day, her movements slow and deliberate, no pacing, no grief shrieks, just the steady rhythm of a mother who'd found her purpose again. Rachel, watching from a distance, saw what no datasheet could explain. She's alive again. She told the board at a special review meeting, her voice firm, not just surviving, living. The board approved additional funding for enrichment therapy and even a potential expansion to the human-animal emotional bonding program. But Rachel still hesitated, the question looming over her like a storm. What happens if Liam stops coming? Then came unexpected news. Liam had begun asking questions about that time in his life, about the program, about why they'd stopped visiting. Jessica, sitting with him one evening, finally told the truth, her voice gentle as she showed him an old photo. A man smiling, his arms around baby Liam. Your father, she said softly, when he died, I didn't know how to face anything, including this place. Kala was the only thing that calmed you. You used to call her Big Mama. Liam didn't remember the name, but when he whispered it at the enclosure the next day, Kala let out a deep, low sound, almost like a sigh. Her dark eyes softening with recognition, something new began. Liam started drawing her, dozens of sketches of Kala with him, with her baby, watching the world through the glass. Rachel collected them, taping them inside the staff office, her voice quiet as she studied them. He's her closure, but maybe she's his, too. One cloudy afternoon, Liam placed his latest drawing on the glass. Kayla standing strong, holding hands with a smaller gorilla, a baby. Rachel knelt beside him, her voice soft. We found one. A baby gorilla. Orphaned, young, scared? We think she's ready. The day the baby arrived, the zoo staff held their breath. The crate opened, and Kala watched from a distance, slow and cautious. The infant stepped forward, wobbly and wide-eyed, alone. Then Kala moved, not fast, not hesitant, just sure. She walked to the baby and sat, the infant pressing against her leg. For the first time since losing her own child, Kala wrapped her arms around another, her embrace steady and sure. Outside, Liam watched with quiet tears, his small frame trembling. He didn't press his hand to the glass this time. Instead, he whispered, "You don't have to miss me anymore." Kala turned her head, her dark eyes meeting his, and let out a soft grunt, a sound of gratitude. Of peace. Liam smiled through his tears, his voice barely audible. "I'll always come back to see you, Big Mama." And as Kayla cradled the new baby, her enclosure filled with a warmth it hadn't known in years. Liam knew their bond, across species, across time, would never break.